Ever driven through a town so quiet you pulled over just to check if you'd lost signal? New York carries a reputation for chaos. Yellow cabs stacked at red lights, subway cars screeching into stations, millions of people moving fast towards somewhere else. But drive a few hours outside the city, and the entire state changes character. Streets go quiet, porch lights click on one by one as the sun drops. You might pass 3 cars in 20 minutes, and the loudest sound around is a screen door creaking shut. These aren't ghost towns. Real families live here, quietly going about their lives. Today, we're counting down 10 New York towns that feel almost too peaceful, too still, too quiet to be real. Number 10, Coxsackie, Greene County. Coxsackie sits right along the Hudson River in Greene County, and most people driving through New York never even notice it exists, which is exactly what makes it worth stopping for in the first place. The village has been going through a quiet little renaissance over the past few years, but quiet really is the operative word no matter how you look at it. Walk down Reed Street early in the morning, before most of the town has even had its first cup of coffee, and you'll get river views that genuinely stop people mid-scroll on their phones. Old brick buildings from the 1800s lining the water. Nothing rushed, no traffic sounds bleeding into the moment at all. What makes Coxsackie feel almost surreal is the contrast between what's actually here and how little anyone talks about it outside the immediate area. This is a town with real history, real architecture that's been carefully maintained for 2 centuries, and yet it barely registers on most people's radar when they think about New York destinations worth visiting. There's no crowd jostling for the best angle, no line waiting to get into a coffee shop, no honking impatience anywhere in sight the entire time you're there. Stand on that riverfront for 20 minutes and your only company might be a heron picking through the shallows or a fisherman quietly casting a line into the current, not saying a word to anyone around him. It's the kind of place where you start to wonder if you've accidentally wandered onto someone's private property. Except everyone you pass along the way waves and says, "Good morning," like they've known you your entire life, not just for the 5 minutes you've actually been standing there taking photos. Number 9, Schoharie County. Schoharie feels like it exists just slightly outside of normal time, tucked into a valley surrounded by farmland that rolls out toward the horizon in every single direction you look. The pace here is almost jarring if you're coming from anywhere, with traffic lights that actually matter, anywhere where people check their watches or rush through a yellow light without a second thought about it. This is farm country in the truest sense of the word. Silos rising up out of open fields, old barns leaning slightly with age and years of weather, long gravel driveways leading back to homes you can barely make out from the road as you pass by them. The town survived a devastating flood a number of years back, and in a strange way, that shared history seems to add another layer to the atmosphere here. Something you can almost sense without anyone telling you the story outright when you first arrive. There's a quiet resilience you can feel walking through the small downtown strip, like the buildings themselves remember what it means to weather something hard and simply keep going without making a fuss about it afterward. What makes Schoharie unsettling in the best possible way is just how empty the roads feel, even during what should technically be a busy afternoon on any normal day. You can drive for miles past open fields without seeing another car coming the opposite direction, and when you finally reach the small cluster of downtown buildings, it doesn't feel like a town center, so much as a movie set paused right before the extras were supposed to walk into frame and start their scene. Before we keep going, if you're the kind of person who loves finding places most people have never even heard of, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because the towns coming up only get quieter from here, and you're genuinely not going to want to miss where this list ends up landing by the time we're done. Number 8, Jeffersonville, Sullivan County. Jeffersonville sits tucked into the Catskill Mountains, and with a population that barely clears 400 people, it might genuinely be one of the smallest true communities on this entire list. This is farm town living in its purest form, horseback riding trails winding through open pasture, working orchards heavy with fruit in the fall months, sheep grazing lazily in fields that stretch out toward distant mountain ridge lines in the background behind them. What strikes most visitors isn't just how small the population actually is, it's how completely self contained the whole place feels once you spend any real time there getting to know it. There's a cozy bed and breakfast, a working farm that offers tours to visitors, a small handful of local shops clustered together near the center of town, and honestly, that's about the extent of it. No chain restaurants pulling your attention away, no fast food signs lighting up the roadside at night. Nothing that reminds you the outside world is still out there humming along without you the whole time you're away. When night actually falls here, it falls completely and without any apology whatsoever. No streetlights competing with the stars overhead. No distant highway hum drifting in from somewhere off in the dark beyond the tree line. Step outside after dinner, and the sky looks almost like a planetarium show, thick with stars that city light pollution erased from most people's memory years ago without them even noticing it happening slowly over time. Visitors who spend a weekend here often admit the hardest adjustment isn't the spotty cell signal or the extra drive time needed to get groceries, it's simply remembering how to sit still on a porch without needing something, anything, to feel the silence pressing in around them from every side. Number 7. Hammondsport, Steuben County. Hammondsport keeps roughly 500 residents nestled right beside Keuka Lake in the heart of the Finger Lakes region. And it might honestly be one of the most photogenic yet criminally overlooked towns in the entire state of New York. The lake itself does a huge amount of the visual heavy lifting here. That deep, almost impossible blue water framed by rolling vineyard hills creates a backdrop that genuinely looks painted rather than naturally occurring in front of you as you take it all in. But it's the town layout itself that really sells the feeling of unreality once you're actually standing in it, soaking up the atmosphere around you. A small village green anchors the center of everything. Little shops circle around the perimeter, and there's a stillness to the whole arrangement that makes it feel curated, almost staged for effect, even though generations of the same families have called this place home for well over 100 years now without ever leaving. Wander down toward the water in the early evening, and you'll likely have an entire stretch of shoreline completely to yourself, watching the sun catch the vineyards across the lake while the water barely ripples beneath a gentle passing breeze off the hills. There's a long local brewing history here too, stretching back generations, which adds this strange undercurrent of quiet, steady industry beneath all that visual calm, busy hands working away almost in total silence, day after day, season after season. Hammondsport proves pretty convincingly that a town doesn't need thousands of residents to leave a lasting impression on someone passing through. Sometimes 500 people in one genuinely gorgeous lake is more than enough to make you question why you'd ever choose to live somewhere louder than this again. Number 6, Shelter Island, New York. This next one plays by an entirely different set of rules because you literally cannot just drive here. Shelter Island is only reachable by car ferry, and that single detail alone sets the tone for everything that follows once you actually arrive on the other side of the water. That short ferry ride across the water functions almost like a decompression chamber, slowly stripping away whatever noise and urgency you carried with you from the mainland side of things before you even realize it's happening. By the time you roll your car off the boat ramp, something in your shoulders has already started to relax without you even consciously noticing it happening to you at all. The island sits surrounded by Noyak and Gardiner's Bay, and it delivers this waterfront, picture-perfect quality that genuinely feels staged for a postcard company, rather than existing as an actual place where people live year-round with jobs and routines and everyday responsibilities. Beaches here stay wide open and quiet even during peak summer season, with lifeguards present, but crowds that never seem to materialize the way they do at more famous beaches just a short drive away on the mainland side of Long Island. Then there's Mashomack Preserve, over 2,000 protected acres where you can walk for hours through forest, marsh, and open field without hearing much of anything, besides birdsong and the sound of your own footsteps on the trail beneath you the whole way through. What makes Shelter Island feel so strange in the best possible sense is its close proximity to some of the busiest, loudest summer destinations in the entire country, and yet it somehow manages to remain almost completely untouched by that surrounding chaos, like it exists in its own separate pocket of time altogether. If any of these towns have made you want to pack a bag and disappear for a weekend, drop a comment letting us know which one you'd visit first. We genuinely read every single comment that comes in, and it helps shape which towns we end up covering in future videos down the line. Number 5. Skaneateles, Onondaga County. Skaneateles sits at the northern tip of its namesake lake, widely considered one of the cleanest lakes in the entire United States. And once you're actually standing at its shoreline, you'll believe that claim without needing any convincing at all from anyone. The water is so clear, it looks almost artificial, like reality got filtered through some soft blue lens right before you arrived on the scene to see it for yourself. Genesee Street runs directly through the middle of town, lined with 19th century buildings that have been kept in near pristine condition, now housing small boutiques, bakeries, and art galleries that somehow never feel touristy, despite being genuinely beautiful inside and out. What really separates Skaneateles from other lake towns scattered across the region is how the whole place seems to breathe in rhythm with the water itself. Almost like the two are permanently connected in some quiet way. Boat tours drift quietly out from the municipal dock through the summer months, farmers' markets set up gently along the shoreline every Thursday morning, and yet none of it ever feels rushed or overcrowded, the way similar attractions tend to feel elsewhere in busier, more crowded towns. There's a stillness woven into how the town operates day to day, almost an unspoken agreement among everyone who lives there that things simply don't need to move faster than they already do, no matter what season it happens to be. Even during the busiest stretches of summer, you can still find a quiet bench along the water where the loudest thing around is the gentle lap of the lake against the dock pilings just below you. Number 4, Saranac Lake, Franklin County. Saranac Lake carries the unofficial title of capital of the Adirondacks, and it only takes a single afternoon spent wandering its streets to understand exactly why that nickname stuck around for so long among locals and visitors alike. This town carries a genuinely fascinating history. Back in the early 20th century, people suffering from tuberculosis traveled here specifically for the clean mountain air, and many of the old cure cottages with their distinctive wraparound porches are still standing today. Quiet reminders of an entirely different era of medicine and hope for the sick who came seeking it. That layered history gives the town an almost meditative feeling, like the whole place still remembers what it means to heal slowly and deliberately, without rushing the process along for anyone's convenience or comfort. Surrounded on all sides by mountains and dense forest, Saranac Lake maintains a genuine year-round artistic community that somehow manages to stay almost completely under the radar, despite producing real, lasting culture worth noticing and celebrating. Every winter, the town builds an elaborate ice palace as part of a carnival tradition that's been running since the late 1800s. And there's something almost dreamlike about watching a structure made entirely of frozen lake water rise up against a backdrop of silent, snow-covered mountains in the distance behind it all. Walk the residential streets here in the early morning, in any season really, and you'll notice how sound just seems to disappear into the surrounding trees. No traffic, no chatter, nothing but the occasional creak of a porch swing or a distant bird call cutting cleanly through the stillness around you. Number 3, Cold Spring, Putnam County. Cold Spring sits right along the Hudson River, and it might be the single most photographed small town anywhere on this entire list. Yet somehow it still manages to feel like a secret every single time you actually visit in person, no matter how many times you've been before. The village pulls its storybook look directly from 19th century architecture, rows of brick storefronts now filled with antique shops, small art galleries, and cozy coffee houses that never seem overcrowded, no matter what time of day you happen to wander through them looking for something to do. Foundry Dock Park used to be a busy loading dock back when this was still an active industrial ironworks town, but today it offers wide-open, unobstructed views across the river, drawing kayakers and sailboats that drift by almost completely silently. What makes Cold Spring feel so genuinely surreal is just how close it sits to New York City, barely over an hour away by train, and yet the moment you actually step off that platform, the shift in energy is almost physical. Something you feel settle in your chest before you even consciously register what's happening around you. Breakneck Ridge rises up sharply just outside the village limits, its trailhead only minutes from where the train drops you off, and hikers disappear into the hills there just as quietly as they arrived earlier that same morning without much fanfare. Walk the main street on any given weekday morning, and you'll find shopkeepers sweeping their own doorsteps, cats sunning themselves lazily in windowsills, and barely a sound beyond birdsong and the occasional car rolling slowly past on its way somewhere else entirely. If you're enjoying this countdown so far, now's a perfect time to hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people discover these hidden towns, and trust us, the final 2 spots on this list are absolutely worth sticking around for. Number 2, Cooperstown, Otsego County. Cooperstown sits at the foot of Otsego Lake, home to just under 2,000 residents, and it somehow manages the rare trick of being world famous while still feeling almost entirely undiscovered once you actually walk its streets in person and take your time exploring. Most people know it as home to the National Baseball Hall of Fame, which pulls in hundreds of thousands of visitors every single year, and yet the town itself never seems to lose its small, tucked-away character, no matter how many tour buses roll through on any given weekend during the summer months. Step off Main Street onto one of the quieter residential blocks nearby, and the crowds simply vanish almost instantly, replaced by tree-lined sidewalks and Federal-era homes that look nearly untouched by the passage of time around them for generations. The entire historic district here is protected, containing over 200 contributing properties on the National Register, which means walking through Cooperstown genuinely feels like stepping into a preserved slice of early American life, rather than some modern tourist stop dressed up to look old for the cameras and social media posts. Otsego Lake stretches out just beyond downtown, with public access at Lakefront Park offering views so still and glass-like that the water often looks like a mirror reflecting the surrounding hills back at whoever happens to be standing there quietly taking it in. Even the local breweries here operate with this low-key, unhurried energy. Nothing about the way Cooperstown functions ever seems to rush, despite carrying a genuinely massive cultural footprint on the national stage that most small towns could only dream of having. Number 1, Sleepy Hollow, Westchester County. And here we are, at the very top of the list, with a town whose name alone has practically become shorthand for eerie, quiet, almost too still to be real small-town America in a way no other place on this list quite matches. Sleepy Hollow sits along the Hudson River in Westchester County, forever tied to Washington Irving's legend of the Headless Horseman, and once the sun starts dropping behind the trees here, you'll understand exactly why that particular story took root in this exact place and nowhere else in the entire country. Walking through the village at dusk feels genuinely different from anywhere else on this entire list. Narrow streets lined with old stone buildings, fog occasionally rolling in off the river, and a stillness that seems to settle over everything the moment the last commuter train pulls away from the station for the night and doesn't come back until morning. The Old Dutch Burying Ground and the adjacent Sleepy Hollow Cemetery stretch across 90 rolling, tree-covered acres, and walking through during daylight hours is peaceful in a way that borders on unsettling. Not because anything actually feels dangerous, but because the silence is so complete, you can genuinely hear individual leaves hit the ground around your feet as you walk. This is a town that leans fully into its reputation without ever feeling like a cheap tourist trap built purely for profit. Even during the busiest Halloween season, there are quiet corners just a block or two off the main streets where you'll find nothing but empty benches and old iron gates creaking gently in the wind that drifts in off the water nearby. What earns Sleepy Hollow the top spot isn't just the folklore attached to its name, it's how completely the actual atmosphere backs up the legend every single time you visit. This isn't a place pretending to be quiet for effect. The silence here feels genuinely ancient, layered like it's been quietly building for centuries, and simply refuses to break for anyone who wanders through, no matter how loud the world outside has become. So there you have it. 10 New York towns that prove real peace and quiet still exist out there, sometimes just a short drive from places you'd never expect to find it waiting for you. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, do us a favor and subscribe, because we've got plenty more of these hidden, almost too quiet to be real towns coming soon, and you genuinely won't want to miss the next one when it drops. Let us know down in the comments which of these 10 surprised you the most, and we'll see you in the next video.